remember exactly what Carol asked me to do. But what I understood her to say was, I want you to tell us why you're here and not somewhere else. I've been able to identify 4 critical steps in my journey that's resulted in Mary Ann and I being here. 4 factors. It was in the late 1980s, I think, when I first noticed an Egyptian in Murfreesboro. This man was in his early to mid-40s. And he could be seen walking regularly along East Main Street in Murfreesboro, in the vicinity of a friend's house, one of my friends. My friend was a member of First Baptist Church, as we were, and his name was Tom Brown. He always seemed to me to be holding a book and reading while he was walking. I assumed that was so he could be obedient to the scripture that says to buy at the time, make the best use of the time that you have. But I didn't have any personal interaction with him at that time. I was pretty sure Tom was not his primary interest, but rather Carol. After they were married and graduated from seminary, I followed their work in the Middle East, but I didn't get to know him until after they returned from their service with the International Mission Board and returned to Tennessee. But a big part of my attraction to Arabic Baptist Church was this, my future shepherd, Rav Gaddis. When I first learned that there were Egyptian believers in Murfreesboro, there was a small group of them meeting in the old Employment Security Office. It's located behind First Baptist Church. I was interested at that time in knowing the worship practices of Egyptians, but I never did follow up on that curiosity until the group had already moved to Grace Baptist facilities, and significant for me, until I had a near-death experience. I have always been a healthy person, never overweight, sometimes underweight. I was a big eater, but I was confronted at age 71 with a 99% blockage in a major artery they call the Widowmaker. The surgeon who did this operation told me that if I had had another heart attack, even after being in the hospital and him ready to operate on me, he could not have saved me. The blockage was so severe. So I took this as a wake-up call for God to make the most of the rest of my life. And I trusted Him to place me in a church where that could happen. I had for some time been interested in a back-to-the-basics church model. And on several occasions, Dr. Gaddis and I discussed a number of theological issues that included an optimum model for being the church. Of every conviction that I shared with him concerning the best model for doing church, even if it would be considered radical by some, he would say, I agree with you 100%. So over time, I grew into a settled conviction that the most efficient and effective means of God making the most of the rest of my life was to be found in the formation, the functioning of the New Testament model of church. I'm sure all of you know what the New Testament model is. It's the model that the New Testament people followed. But to give you a little better idea of what my thinking was about the New Testament model, I want to explain by drawing a contrast between the New Testament model and what's very popular in churches today. In a New Testament church, there's a shepherd who's all about giving himself for the sheep. In many churches in the last 20 years, a model has been adopted that looks like a CEO model, running the church with a board backing him up. That's very different from a shepherd giving himself to his sheep. Everything that Rauf wanted his sheep to be, he modeled. He showed them what it was like. There was a case of a young couple. When Mary Ann and I first came to Arabic Baptist Church, he was taking them through master life, which was not a trivial, for some it could be a challenging study. And this is a young couple, and I thought, you're the pastor of the church. You're taking just two people through master life. What am I missing here? What I was missing, I think, was he wanted to model for this couple what a disciple looked like. But at the same time, he wanted to model what a disciple maker would look like. And I think by his giving of himself to them, he was showing them what they should think in terms of whenever they began to disciple other people. Another example that was meaningful to me is that after I came home from surgery, was blessing. He brought nearly a third of the church to my house to see me. He was modeling for them what it's like for a shepherd to be concerned about his sheep. Another difference between the New Testament model and the current models today is that the New Testament model is busy making obedient disciples by teaching and preaching the Word. Where many churches today instead are entertaining people with things that come from the world, and too often giving them a false sense of security. The New Testament church, one of the characteristic features that I would like would be that believers break bread together. These guys did it daily. So we need to step that up a little bit, Carol. On the other hand, the church would consider it to be successful to act a mega church entertainment center or entertaining people where you have no chance for any one-on-one interaction and encouraging and strengthening and building one another up. New Testament church would be concerned that the ministry of the church be maximized. And that would mean sort of inverting the use of financial means from what the world does. I've paid attention to how much the budget of churches go to staff members and how much goes to buildings and upkeep. And I feel pretty confident to say that in a lot of churches in America today, 80% is spent on salaries and buildings and upkeep, 20% on ministry. My model, and Rauf agreed with me, is that it needs to be, they've got it upside down. We need to spend 80% of what God gives us in ministry and 20% in the rest. So the bottom line that I need to ask myself the question is, what does success look like for a New Testament church? The impact for me will be measured by the number of new believers, the number of new disciples, the number that are making disciple makers, and the number of house churches that we plant. Whereas in the case of, I've heard it said that most pastors, a lot of pastors, when they get together, they talk about, what they talk about is, how's your church doing? They'll cite attendance, and they'll cite offerings, but they don't talk about disciple makers and that life. So this was the kind of model Raouf was modeling for this church. And that model is a large part of why we are here. The other factor is the people factor. You know, I've been going to church for 70 years, I guess. Close to 70 years. But I have never encountered a group of believers like I did in this church. How were they different? They were bold in their faith. Even when miracles are called for, they're bold, ready to go, ready to pray. They're fervent in their praying. Being in prayer meetings with them, this group of people, for me was like being in worship. Because even though I didn't have any idea what they were praying for initially, their whole being was involved in a dialogue with God. I later learned, after Carol started translating prayers, that they were very different in what they prayed for as well as how they prayed. They didn't pray for things for themselves nearly as much as they prayed for things for God. They wanted the kingdom to be expanded. They wanted God's glory to be increased. They wanted to be made more like Christ. They were asking for the kind of things that I think God wanted them to ask for. It has been a blessing in my life. Their love for us was agape love, where each esteems others as better than themselves. Their dependence on God when meeting their needs was as firm as their faith. Their desire to see Muslims come to Christ was a common passion that they all shared. Unlike a lot of churches that I've been familiar with, this church was in one accord, in encouraging, strengthening, and building one another up. There was a strong sense of calling of the members of this church to show the love of God and to share the ministries of Arabic Baptist Church with those that God would see fit to add to the body. I could see it over a pretty short period of time that people would come, new people, and they would first go to the worship service most of the time. They would question Pastor Rose and some of the members of the church about things I guess they were concerned about. But many of them concluded that this is where God wants me to be, not where I want to be, but I feel like based upon what God's been dealing with me in my life about, and what I see happening with this group of people, this is the place that He wants us to be. Mary Ann and I became convinced that He wanted us here on July 26th 2015. So we're newbies. If he wants any of you here, I invite you to say yes to his call. Marianne and I will love you just like they loved us.
I wasn't growing with them or gaining much from them. So I began to pray that the Lord would give me people that had a vision and had ministry. I thought maybe I was imagining something that wasn't there, but prayed that it would be. So when I was in college one day, I was speaking Arabic in the cafeteria, and there was an American guy, 100% American, and he heard me speaking Arabic, and he began to talk to me in Arabic, and he began to talk about Pastor Rose and Carol. He took my name and my Facebook. He said, I'll update you about shared the story about Rose and Carol, about how they were missionaries. So it was there was a ministry of Pastor Rose at Bel Air Church.
شفت الانفيتيشن
So I
وفكرت شويه وقلت should I go or لا.
And I thought, well, do I go or not?
فلقيت نفسي فعلا بروح.
So I went.
And كانت أول مرة أشوف الأسيس رؤوف.
It's the first time I saw Pastor Rose.
I think that was 2011. كان بيدي محاضرة عن الإسلام.
He was talking about Islam and how to reach Muslims.
بعد ما كان أول مرة أدخل كنيسة أمريكانية
وأحضر يعني I've been in an American church and went to a seminar like that.
I really liked it so much. حسيت إن في حاجة مختلفة يعني.
I really liked it because it was something different for me.
فبعد كده رحت وقدمت نفسي للأسيس والولد ده قدمني للأسيس برضه.
I introduced myself to the pastor and the guy that was there. And he also Chris introduced me to
Pastor. وبعد كده بدأ بقى بعت لي كريس أول اجتماع عربي هنعمله في التعامل في مurfreesboro.
So Chris told me about the first meeting they were going to do in Murfreesboro.
أول ما بدأت أدخل الشرش طبعا أنا داخلة شخصية مختلفة خالص عن اللي أنا حصل دلوقتي يعني.
So the first time I went, of course, felt so different from who I am now.
لما فكرت ينفعش اقول كنيسه من غير قائد.
So when I think about a Arabic Baptist church, I can't think of a church without thinking about a building or the auditorium or the leader.
A leader. ما ينفعش قائد. Like a
leader. Yeah, without a leader. Sorry, I'm not a good translator.
That's okay, you're good. I'm sorry, I was too. So في كنائس كتيرة قوي موجودة.
Yeah, so there are many churches.
ممكن تكون فيها صلبان وحاجات كتير يعني بس
crosses and everything.
بس ممكن ما دام ما فيش leader
they don't really have a good leader.
يعني عنده goal وعنده vision.
And has a goal and vision.
ما بتبقاش يعني ممكن ما يبقاش المكان اللي أنا ممكن أروحه. لكن فعلا لقيت إن الكنيسة العربية المعمدانية كانت متنقلة. ولما بقول الكنيسة العربية المعمدانية في مركز بول لما بدأنا هو القسيس رؤوف.
So when I think about the Arabic Baptist Church, I think about Pastor Oath. They're one thing together.
So I would say unconditional love when I think about المكان والشخص والقائد دوا كان عنده محبة غير عادية.
He really had one unconditional love.
تشجيع غير عادي ليا.
Amazing encouragement for me.
When I didn't believe in myself, he believed on me. فدي كانت نقطة بصراحة في حياتي غيرت حاجات كتيرة جدا.
It's really changed a lot in my life.
بدأت أتعلم أفكار جديدة منه.
I learned to learn many new things from him.
وبدأت ما كنت يعني أوقات أحس إن الحالة اللي أنا فيها دي مختلفة عن ناس كتير.
Sometimes I thought the situation I was in was different from a lot of other people.
بس لما دخلت الكنيسة العربية المعمدانية
But when I went to the Baptist church,
قابلت بنات كتير قوي.
I met a lot of people, a lot of believers.
في السن بتاعي بدأنا
in my age.
وبدأنا نشارك مع بعض.
And we began to share together these thoughts.
والقسيس كان دايما مبسوط وفرحان
وعاوز. And the pastor was always happy to see us together.
يعني إن هو يساعدوني إن أنا حاجات كتير قوي تتغير وحاجات كتير.
He always was trying to help me to change things, to be set free from things.
So كنا بنشارك مع بعض حاجات حسيت إن أنا زي أي حد تاني عنده مشاكل وعنده.
So I began to realize that I was like a lot of other people that had troubles and suffering.
مع إني ما حسيتش كده في عاداتنا وتقاليدنا العربية لأني أوقات كتير قوي ما ينفعش
Many times we don't think about this in our Arabic culture because we don't talk about these things.
Don't talk about things. لو عندك ألم عندك
If you have anything wrong, you don't talk about it. So
لازم تبقي
this
شكلك
was a new thing for me.
ففعلا لما بدأت أبقى vulnerable وأتكلم.
When I began to be vulnerable and just share my thoughts.
والصلاة وقراية الكتاب.
And to pray and to read the Bible.
أفكار كتير قوي مشت.
So many things left me, so many bad thoughts.
وأنا كنت عاملة زي الإسفنجة.
I was like a sponge,
like observing everything,
soaking everything up.
عشان أنا كنت بصلي قبلها فترة إن الله يديني.
Because I was praying that the Lord would give me people.
وchurch يكون عندها رؤية.
That would have a vision.
فالحاجة دي يعني من ربنا
وأنا متأكدة منها.
أنا بصلي النهاردة لناس كتير قوي يعني إن أنا صعب عليا إن أنا أقف في المكان ده وأشارك.
It's very hard for me to stand and share this with you. I don't like to speak in front of people. بس
الشخص ده القسيس ونسته والناس الحلوين اللي عندهم في الكنيسة
beautiful people that I met in this church.
ليهم تأثير قوي
That had a
عليا.
great effect on my life.
إن أنا أصلا مش حاطة ولا يعني
Because
paper ولا أي حاجة بس هي بالنسبة لي كأنه فيلم بدأ من أول لغاية دلوقتي.
That started from the beginning till now.
ماشي
that I could see.
كليدرز إن إحنا المفروض نكون فعلا إن اللي هيكمل العمل بتاع القسيس دلوقتي.
Continue the work of Pastor Oath now.
أكيد إحنا كلنا خدنا منه حاجات كتير.
All of each one of us took things from him. And he didn't die.
بس بصلي إن العمل يكمل بنفس
But I pray that this
اللي
work
هو
will
علمه
continue
لنا.
what he taught us.